It's the 11th day of October. It's the 13th anniversary. It's 2024. It's Dana. Hey, I'm back again. Number 4. Should TEPCO, International Atomic Energy Agency, the nuclear industry get Oscars for Fukushima nuclear fallout cover-up? You know I'm right. Come on, you know I'm right. Come on, give me creds. That's pretty crazy what they done. They covered up Fukushima nuclear meltdown. And, you know, pre-Fukushima, somebody had asked me, could you cover up blatant multiple nuclear meltdowns? I probably would have agreed with you. You could. But not to this extent where the whole planet is going around with one thumb in their mouth and the other one up their belly button. You got a dirty friggin' mind out there. Stop that. So, Jimmy Kimmel and Robert Downey Jr. got a little thing going on I'm not aware of. I was trying to comprehend how Oppenheimer got 7 Oscars. Well, obviously, when you tell a lie that good, it must have been an exceptional lie. They got 7 Oscars. I'm stuttering. Bloop. Because that's probably the first time I ever said the word Oscar out loud, right? So the official story is everything is in 1,000 tanks. Nothing got out. What did is equal to 3 grams of sugar. That's worth an Oscar. Come on, man. Tell me that's not worth an Oscar. Look at the media pretending they're in reactor 4 fuel pool. Tell me that's not worthy of an Oscar. You know, let's play the video of it, because that's even more of just banging your head kind of stuff. My luck, I can't find the video. Oh, bad luck, I found it. Let's play that video, and then I don't even know what I said that time. Play the video anyway. And just tell me that they don't deserve an Oscar. They're pretending they're in the building to the left. I dare you, double dare you to tell me they don't deserve an Oscar.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Okay, so if you think they deserve an Oscar, get on over there and give me a thumbs up. If you don't think they deserve an Oscar, go fuck yourself. You're a piece of shit. Dana Durnford, the nuclearproctologist.org. You can call in right now to the live show, or you can wait till the live show starts in about 2.5 hours, which is 709-589-4406. Just in case you're blind, there's a few of us. I'm blind. I can only see nuclear. Technically, I'm blind. Come on. So, like, they don't deserve an Oscar for pretending they're in a fuel pool. Somebody voted no, and I don't understand that. What's wrong with you? Didn't your mommy and daddy give you enough loving when you were growing up? So we're talking about Fukushima. You can call into these live shows. This is the 13th anniversary of an extinction level event. First, the bacteria and the fungus goes, then the insects goes, and then the species go, and then, you know, we go. And so they decided to help us along with the you know what. And you know what has all the same attributes as the Fukushima radioactive fallout. What was really savage was that they continued growing food in the 14 prefectures that were banned by 55 countries for a decade, and in shipping that radioactive food, lethal food, leukemia in a dish, as I like to call it. Have a bowl of leukemia worldwide. And so you're talking roughly 14 billion pounds a year being shipped worldwide. Half of that is going to be rice. And rice is used for all kinds of baking, all kinds of confectionery goods, all kinds of drinks. So it wasn't just the Fukushima prefecture affected by the multiple nuclear meltdowns. You had 4 nuclear reactors melt down and 8 fuel pools melted down. Now, I'd tell you they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. That's a one-ton bag in the back of a one-ton pickup truck, bumper to bumper, is 5 continuous rows of one-ton bags around the entire planet. But Al Jazeera says it's 60 million one-ton bags.
There's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil that's being stored, planned to be stored, outside the Fukushima Daiichi perimeter fence.
So did they pick up 60 million one-ton bags or 30 million one-ton bags? We know they picked up 30 million. And we don't have anything else to compare that to. That's the worst accident in human history, bar nothing. It's just a single one of Fukushima's reactors melting down, not counting the fuel pools at the top of the buildings, are equal to about 1,000 Chernobyls. And just a single reactor is worse than all nuclear meltdowns in history combined. These were horrific, horrifying, stupefying amount of radioactive fallout we're talking about. It's an ungodly amount. I'm having a problem with YouTube. Just hang on there. If I start blinking in and out, it won't surprise me. This is the anniversary that nobody is allowed to think about, and you're definitely not allowed to talk about it. And I can guarantee you that these villains, these evil, wicked, atrocious, these monsters, I'm almost ready. These are terrorists, right? There you go, James Lucid. The first to say it. CNN should definitely get, which is Anna Karenina.
Prime standing is on top.
CNN should get an award. That's CNN right there. Like, the building actually doesn't exist. They're claiming they're in, folks. It doesn't even exist. And that the whole thing... Oh, do I have audio? No. And that the whole thing, there's nothing left. So they built this contraption, and the media went in and pretended that they were in a fuel pool that actually doesn't even exist. 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. And the media says they should get Oscars too, shouldn't they? They say it's like eating a banana, walking in sunshine, flying on an airplane. But if you took their loved ones and fed them Fukushima rice, they would attack you. Physically. Who am I kidding? A journalist couldn't beat up a journalist if they wanted to, let alone anybody else. So I wanted to, because these little presentations today are typically a half an hour long, and the idea is to just keep this narrative full of documentation, because nobody's putting out any kind of documentation today. So I'm going to direct your attention to, I was going to play that, I'm going to play that video that I played in the last 2 shows, to the species die-offs due to Fukushima radioactive fallout.
May be worse than thought. Studies from last year indicate that radioactive water will contaminate the entire Pacific Ocean in just 6 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
This graphic shows the gradual contamination of the Pacific Ocean due to leaks of radioactive water from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. The simulation, which was run by a German Marine Research Institute, shows the entire Pacific waters being polluted by radioactive water in just 6 years.
That was the end of August 2013. So you had over 1 million atoms of the krypton 185 over North America, covering the entire planet within 13 days. Absurd numbers. Per square meter. You had 20 million particles, and the particles actually worse than the atom. Of radioactive iodine 131 per liter fell on the United States during the peak Fukushima. So these are catastrophic numbers. 220 million atoms per liter of iodine 129 in the rain. So this, the 129 to 131, and there was also 10 times more 132 and 30 times more 133 than the massive iodine 131. And the 132 to 133 iodines are 10 times more efficient at ionizing and radiating the thyroid gland than the extremely efficient 131 is. And the 130-29, that's saturated for 150 million years, the thyroid glands of every species. And so all the species were immediately now, within a week or so, producing radioactive hormones permanently. And this is one of the many adverse things that were going on, but it's very important because the thyroid produces hormones. So now you got radioactive hormones instead of hormones in all the species. And so it started sterilizing also with the X-rays, the full body X-rays from the gammas, the neutrons, the betas, the alphas hitting each other, created the X-rays. The X-rays are distributing full body X-rays to all the species, all the humans, all the insects. And everything that's closer, the closer you are to the ground, the more effect this has on you. And you breathe more in is what I mean by that. And you consume a lot more if you're, in the insect world, obviously, right? So then there was the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. And the sulfur was from spraying salt waters on these enormous temperatures because they had no fresh water. And there's every nuclear scientist on the planet knew this was creating massive radioactive plumes that are hot particles. And so the sulfur is liberated from the seawater at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, is allegedly sprayed upon. And this creates these sulfur balls, these spherical balls. And they ingest the uranium, the curium, the plutonium, americium, neptunium, and everything else. And they did all radioactive fallout has an engine. It has its own little nuclear engine. And in the case of this, it's a 150 million year nuclear engine. There's 10 half-lives. And what happens is it can move. It doesn't need jet streams and stuff like that because it has this own energy where it pulses almost at the speed of light every second. And in every other description out there, that's called an engine. And so you ever look, when you got a beautiful sunny day, you clean up your house, it's summertime, the windows are open, and the house is perfectly clean. And darn it, here's the sunshine coming in through your window, and you can see all this dust just floating around. But they're smaller than that, so to speak. And they have that same attribute where they can just sit in the air. And so when you're talking about 220 million atoms per liter of rainfall, it's not just rain that distributes this, right? It's liberated too. When it dries out the next day, this stuff is liberated from the raindrops, and it's just sitting there floating around. And that's just, but it's, if you got that doing it, then you got all these other isotopes that are doing the exact same thing. And so Oppenheimer has truly set us on the path to no return. And it's also known as global warming, 80 years of global warming from radioactive fallout. It never goes away. It never stops pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. Gas, oil, and coal emissions create carbon. Carbon creates life. It's quite a bizarre lie. So I launched emergency research expeditions. And we've from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. And these were very difficult times. I still have unbelievable heartaches over these expeditions. And you always hope that the pain will go away.
Well, we got
but
the
it
big
never
one.
seems to. And so what I discovered on these research expeditions, if I can ever get to them, is that this is an extinction event. And I've attacked this equation from every angle. I was on the ocean for 4 to 5 months at a time, right? Without coming home, and out there looking for the species. And the species to your left are now exterminated due to Fukushima. And the Oppenheimer glorifies the extinction by not doing it, giving it good credence. Look, they just blocked me on YouTube. I have fiber optics. It's 1 million. Fiber optics is 1 million. I'm sorry, kilobytes a second. It's 1,000 megabytes a second. Very, very high. And fiber optics just doesn't quit. It doesn't get weak. It doesn't quit. So now we got the bandwidth back. But Oppenheimer movie has personified the extinction event by not talking about the adverse side effects. So the population that watches Oppenheimer has no concept that the radioactive fallout will cause extinction events. And so these pictures are from the research expeditions. The pictures to the left are verified pictures, and the pictures to the right are the pictures after. So what I done, I went back for 6 years on the research expeditions for 4 to 5 months a year to see if the species recovered. And the species to your left didn't recover. And we knew this, but we had to go back and verify it. And in the hopes the world would come to its senses and come up with solutions for all the dumps worldwide. Everything has to be recovered. From all the landfills, from all the ocean dumping, the despicable ocean dumping. So the Soviet Union, Russia has 18,000 dumps in the Arctic, in the ocean. Not counting everywhere else. And when you look at what Mayak has done in the Urals, in Russia, the former Soviet Union, so the species to your left now are exterminated. That's due to Fukushima radioactive fallout. And people can live in denial all you want. You can pretend all you want, but you're just a piece of shit for pretending. You're just a worthless human for pretending. And because the reality of it is, the species really did exist. And the nuclear reactors did melt down. The radioactive fallout covered the entire planet within 20 days. And my research expeditions are unassailable. I just took my time and meandered through the 27,000 naked islands. There's no longer insects, there's no birds, and there's no species left in the tidal zones. And no matter where you shipwreck, you will starve to death in 27,000 islands. And radioactive fallout pulses energy almost at the speed of light every second. That's what makes it the most evilest thing, because nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. Excuse me. So the species to your left were wonderful. Now, I could never land my little Zodiac on the beaches if the ecosystem existed, because you would immediately punch hundreds of holes in your Zodiac with the sea urchins. And I used to pick 20,000 3-inch sea urchins a day for up to 100 days at a time. And all these harbors and anchorages, I dropped anchor in and stayed for many nights or weeks at a time working at these areas. I'm very familiar with this ecosystem. And it used to bother me that when I was diving and whenever I touched down on the ocean floor, I had a lot of times you can't avoid the life because the ocean floor was literally a wall of life. And the big sunflower urchin, for instance, or starfish, when it was coming through these areas, all the other species would get out of the way. Now, this could take 4, 5, 6 hours to clear out 3 or 4 feet for the giant sun starfish to move through, which were basically wiped out after Fukushima, by the way. And I used to do all these experiments because I started noticing this, where the place would open up and then close behind the starfish, because I would be down for 6 hours at a time on the air systems, the air hose systems. And so 30 million one-ton bags wasn't the end of the story, see? The radioactive fallout, where all Fukushima destroyed our health. And because you can't smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or perceive it or touch it up or pick it up rather or throw rocks at it, does it mean it doesn't exist? Were the species to your left worth saving? Were the species to the left important? Because all the migratory birds would feast in the tidal zones where there was 7,000 highly visible species, but there was another 5,500 species, for instance, of the invertebrates without the backbones, like the little shrimps. There was 482, these were we recognize, we acknowledge, we have names for, species. And so the 700 algae would harbor around 5,500 recognized species of invertebrates. There's also seahorses on certain parts of the coastline where because this is the tropical rainforest. Even though a lot of people deny it, I've seen it myself. So you can deny that they exist out there, but you can't. I can't because I've seen them in diving. But there's also in the tidal zones and underwater 482 species of worms, and they would leave these large casings that looked like worms, but that's what they lived in, right? And they over many, I don't know how long their lifespans were. I'm sure they're all quite different. It was very amazing. It was incredible. If you go look at the pictures up at the nuclearproctologist.org, what you find out is you'll see 27,000 islands, but you'll also see the majority of the islands got golden beaches, like beautiful, perfect sand. All around the islands would be many, many beaches, and there's 27,000 islands. And the beaches are made of shellfish. That beautiful sand is. There's clams, there's little necks and manillas, the razorback clams. There's the gooey ducks, which is a big clam, a very expensive clam. There's the abalones, the scallops, there's the oysters, there's the whelks, the snails, there's the mollusk. There's absurd diversity just of shellfish. And the abalones, and when the shells break down, that's what makes the sand. But I remember this the first time I ever seen this particular site. I've seen quite a lot over the years, obviously. But the first time I ever seen, I was dived. There was a nice little protected bay. It was pretty stormy, and I was on the back of a bunch of islands, and there was this like horseshoe. But it was a pretty big drop off. But if you're working the shoreline, it wasn't so bad. You can get a day's work in, right? But you couldn't work where you wanted to because it was too rough. So anyway, there was a little beach there, beautiful golden sand beach. And I was going to work one side, and then I was going to work my way across the beach and start on the other side. I was doing harvesting at that time. And I'd done basically all the industries in diving, but harvesting food was one of my favorites, because it was a very personal experience with nature. And you're only harvesting a certain size, so there's no way to really hurt the species. And because the coast is so vast and you can only work so few places, and at only certain depths and stuff like that, there was no way to adversely affect the species. You were select harvesting, you quotas, and that was it, right? But a lot of the places nobody's ever dove in history that we know about, I have dove those places. Several thousand anyway. And I was going from one rocky area, because the mountain, it's usually like trees right up to the shoreline, but some places where you get like little cliffs and that falls off into the ocean. That usually makes for really nice picking, but there's a problem with those places is that they got all kinds of caves where all the rocks are piled up on it, and there's actual real-life monsters in those caves. So it's a very intimidating experience, trust me. To the point where I couldn't do those spots anymore. I eventually got spooked too many times. But anyway, there's 2 stories there. So I'm going to tell that first story started on, otherwise I'm going to forget it. So this beach was there, and then I was cutting across the beach, but there was no cliff there. I couldn't hang on the rocks or nothing. And so I had to swim across it. It wasn't very far. But as I got a little closer, I started realizing what I was looking at. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. It was probably about 70 or 80 feet deep there. And I didn't want to go deeper because I would have broke my tables, right? And I was already down for about 4 hours. And so anyway, this beach was a wall. The wall was carved out like somebody took a knife and just carved out a big chunk of the wall, like a little horseshoe. And the whole beach was these shells stacked on top of each other, just layers and layers, about 80 feet tall, all the way up to the golden sand beach. And there was no shellfish on the beaches whatsoever. It's post Fukushima. And I remember how poignant it was for me. But there was all these species, and they were all different stages of decomposition of shellfish. There was this incredible diversity. And I was thinking to myself, there's enough calcium just in this one area to feed everybody calcium for the rest of their life from the shells, right? And I don't know why I was thinking that way, but that was the strange thought that was in my head when I seen it. But the big boulders on each side, stacked on top of each other, I'll go back to that story for a second, they have monsters, actual real-life monsters in it. And could be great big wolf eel or something like that, or could be... I remember this one time, this big octopus starts coming out of the hole. He's about 150 pounds. And he's got a 15, 17 span on him. He's a big boy. And I've tangled with pretty big octopus before. And generally you flip them upside down if you can, right? And they become almost passive when you do it to them. And they're like a umbrella. But if the legs touch you, they just wrap themselves around you. And it's one of the most intimidating things because they have beaks. And the beaks are like a parrot beak. And they use that for tearing chunks off. And when they're on your head, it's not a very nice feeling. You can actually feel them chomping at the side of your head. And so the only way you can get clear of them is not a very nice way at all. You'll flip their mantle inside out and just tear their guts out. And so eventually they're just going to drift off of you. But that's how you deal with them, right? When they won't leave you alone. They're generally very curious. They'll run at you with their legs curled up. Now, I was using underwater drones and underwater cameras when I was on these research expeditions also. These species are exterminated. And the stories I got are now just stories. We'll never see this again. The memories I got are just memories because you'll never take these pictures again. Oppenheimer forgot to tell you that part of the story. And they probably knew. It's hard to believe Nolan didn't know about me. I'm very prolific. I've been around for extreme long time. And if you're going to be looking at nuclear and you don't know who I am, you're living in a box. So the species to your left are now exterminated, thanks to Fukushima. And because the radioactive fallout, this is 19.5 days, 468 hours of radioactive fallout. And so this was the Norwegian Institute for Air Research. So you have an invisible plume covering the entire planet, pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years, with many different isotopes. So the species to your left, they are exterminated post-Fukushima. And that pretending that there is no adverse side effects to radiation is heartbreaking when I see it. And it's heartbreaking because Oppenheimer obviously had no intentions of being honest with its audience. It was about glorifying the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry used Oppenheimer as a leaping point to try to promote nuclear. And they seemed to work together, and because Oppenheimer couldn't do the movie without the nuclear industry. And he made $1 billion or something, right? Good for you, man. Congratulations. I have to work like a dog to do my research, and I have to beg and humiliate myself to get the money just to go to do the meager things. But they're the moral things, too. They're the worthy things. And I wouldn't trade nothing in for what I do. Because I think the species deserves a voice more than the Oppenheimer movie. And the Oppenheimer movie got 7 Oscars at the 96 Academy Award. And 96 years of hoodwinking the population, I don't think is anything to be proud of. And that you shouldn't get awards for something like that. You should just take your money and go off and do your own thing. But don't glorify your betrayal to humanity. And don't pretend that the truth doesn't exist. Because I can guarantee you the truth exists. If you go to my website, you'll get your share of it. I'm going to come in and close the poll. This is the poll. Should TEPCO, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the nuclear industry get Oscars for the Fukushima nuclear fallout and cover up? So we're going to end that poll. We'll be back in 2.5 hours for the last show of the day. It's my third blurp blurp we put out today, typically a half an hour. The first 2 are very, very informative. This one was focusing in on the research expeditions. And that we proved this is an extinction level event. If you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It costs us very little, and it might go a long way. You don't really know until you try. And my last show that had the music was a little bit loud, or a lot loud at the end of it. My apologies. I can't win them all, but I'm glad you told me, because I probably wouldn't have listened and heard it on my own. So that's great. We won't make that mistake again right now or on the main show tonight in 2.5 hours. We'll see everybody there. That's the live call-in show. So get your dial-in finger warmed up, do your exercising, and let's get a bunch of people calling in to show the nuclear industry. Let's give them the gears. Say whatever's on your heart. We'll see you folks in a little tiny bit. Have a great night.